Hello and welcome to episode number 458 of the Armin Show podcast. We are talking about content creation on this one. Glad to have you back on here. 2025 rolling strong. We do it swell. We've got the books. We've got the knowledge. Let's get into it. Quite a bit to cover. A lot of technology right now. AI, image making, content creation. It's never been more advanced than it currently is. And so what can we do with that? I'm using it a lot. Could you use it? What can be some good uses of it? A lot of cool stuff moving forward. Hope you're enjoying the show. Hope you enjoyed past episodes. If you have not checked them out, all kinds of cool people. We're at 458. Interviews go back hundreds at this point. So we're glad to have you on. And let's get into it. So, technology right now, in terms of image making, you can make the coolest stuff ever to describe what you're doing or make imagery for other people that really has an impact on them. So I've got quite a few to pull up. I'm going to showcase them by sharing them. And then you can take a look at if you want to make something like that. First, I'm going to start with something I've made a bunch of. And you can as well, if you feel up to it. I'll pull this one up here. Share that. All right. So, share screen. And we've got an image. Where is that? It is somewhere here. Gemini generated image. Let's pull this one up. Window. Boom. All right. So this is one example. First one I want to pull up to showcase. I made this of Maëlys Bessery, and she was on episode 340 of the show. We talked about Le Tiers Tom, her book, along with a book about Samuel Beckett. She has multiple books that are wonderful, 3 actually, and they represent an Irish-French connection that she brings forth. But here what we've got is an image I made of a quote from her episode. So there's a very slim frontier between reality and dream and imagination. The writer's job is to make things bearable, to move between the real facts and the absurd details of life. So this is something she mentioned during our talk. And not only is it nice to showcase quotes from people you speak with that are quotable in some way, because the knowledge can be spread to others, but it is showcasing the person. It encapsulates messages they have about life. How often do we get representations of people during life that tell you a bit about them? Not too often. Some people go very quietly for a whole period of their existence. And so can it be nice to do this? I believe so. Now, this quote image, we've got the picture of Maëlys. We've got her message, when it happened, as far as what episode. And then the background, this is before I started adjusting backgrounds, but you can have image generation, create a cool abstract background, some kind of background you put details on, as far as it could be sky or ocean, something like that. You have the ability to make a change in each part when you detail it to image generation in Gemini Nano Banana, Google Nano Banana, or ChatGPT has its own, Grok has its own. You can use one of the image generation items that are separate by themselves. Midjourney was popular. But this is with Nano Banana. And with this technology, you can make things that you couldn't have easily made a month ago, a year ago, certainly 5 years ago. And what does that mean? That means you can showcase what you're trying to get out there to people way more easily, as long as you're able to describe it to the image generation prompt. Speaking of the quote, by the way, very slim frontier between reality and dream and imagination. Not too much space between those three. If you have imagination, you might be able to bridge the gap between those two, reality and imagination. So that's quite cool and very interesting one right there. Now, so this is one example where I left the background as an abstract one. And then also with these kinds of things, you can share it out there. The individual involved in the talk can share it to their people. Very cool. And gives an opportunity to express or represent something we don't see much of in society today. Very neat one here. So I'll close that one up. And now I'm going to pull one up that includes a background that matches more accurately to the individual. So here's a great example. By the way, that last one was my least wonderful. Who knows if I'll have her back on, but she wrote 3 books in total. I talked to her about one of them. She's in France, and they are fiction books. And she read a passage from her book in French on that episode, which I very much enjoyed. Shoutouts to Mylis in France. Now we've got the next one here. I am pulling up this one with Mikko. Here, this is Mikko Hipponen. He was on episode 383. We talked about his book, If It's Smart, It's Vulnerable. He's in cybersecurity. He's one of the top cybersecurity people on Earth. He knows technology from way back when. He always shouts out previous technology from 10, 20, 30 years ago, which I find very interesting. And I like that he brings it back and tells people about the roots of internet and computing and floppy disks and PC games and DOS, MS-DOS, and programming early on. All these things, he has a connection to it. So that's very cool. So that's why I liked talking to him. May have him back on in the future. Who knows? But with this book, it was wonderful. Now, the quote here, we are sitting in the middle of the biggest technological revolution in mankind's history, where the importance of geography is disappearing forever. Oh, this is the one before I fixed it. So there's a glitch here. But you can fix it. Oh, this is a good example. Thank gosh. So, is disappearing forever. So first, let me talk about the quote. Yeah, geography is disappearing because we have the internet. We're able to connect far and wide. We were never able to connect like this before. And so being in a certain place doesn't have as much value as it did once. Now, are there some places that still have value? Yes. But there's only so much you can do offline as far as expanding outward. There's some great things offline, but to really reach the outer landscape, the online world is substantial. Now, I want to point out in this quote, it messed up somehow. It said, where the importance of geography is HY is disappearing forever. There was a typo. And I retried it, and it had a typo again. But the good news is, with image generation, you can try a couple different ways. You can redo the quote. You can tell it, hey, wait, there's an issue here. Can you repair that? And in the actual version that I put out, there's no typo there. So even if there is a mistake, things are very adjustable. That's one of the best parts. So nothing is stuck. It's very open and able. Now, in the background here, we've got a cool background. Do you see the background? We've got this network of all the countries on Earth lighted up like across the night sky that matches the quote. Image generation can do a great job, along with if you do prompting from text, asking it about your image, it can make a prompt that'll be a great background. And now you have something that matches what you're trying to say or what's being showcased. That's cool because there's more congruence. And you could ask, what other things could I add to this to make it more interesting? Boom. So there's no shortage of checking on it, getting feedback. You can always, I could post this now in it and get some feedback on what could be added, what could be changed, what would be good to put in there to give it more life. That is an opportunity. We just didn't have all this before. It's so neat. It's so neat, and you're able to do it. You can have color schemes that you want to stick to if you have a brand of some form, and you could focus on text if you're very text-based, just images if you just want to showcase for imagery. There's no shortage of ability at this point, whereas long ago there was more of a shortage of ability. So let me close that one here. So you've seen a couple examples of imagery there. Now I'm going to pull up something different from a quote image. Those were quote images from episodes. And you can do quite a bit in that category because a whole talk can have no shortage of quotes. I could have quotes from this talk, frankly, which is a neat one. Now this one I'm going to pull up. I did not make this, but this is a cool example of what can be made. So I will pull this one up before I go to the next one. I thought this was interesting. Let's share that on there. Great. So here we have, what a neat image. So I did not make this, but I want to showcase this. This is an example of a new model for cognition, an introduction to quaternion process theory. The neat part about this is, what kind of imagery is this? Okay, so yes, you can make imagery like this. Now this is with Notebook LM. You see that at the bottom, right? Google Notebook LM, separate from Nano Banana, but has its own great ability. Multiple things it can make, but this is one of them. So as you can see, look at the level of detail in this imagery. It's got symbols, sections, labels. Everything is so cohesive. You could give somebody a long time and they might not come up with something like this. There's so much to it. Anyone can make imagery like this now, which is neat. So this is showcasing an example of cognition, metaphor of mind as machine, how it's failing. We're no longer just looking at people as a mind, as a machine. It's more than that. Language as a living process, how we're communicating. It's very interesting, actually. And I've talked about language quite a few times on the show. A framework for AI capabilities. It's showing what ability it has. Intuition, fluency, slow empathy. You can develop empathy through AI. This is true, because the feedback loop, you're getting more information than you would have gotten previously. That part's very neat and has a lot of good spirit to it. I just realized what I should do. Switch that out. Boom. There's a pumpkin there. So maybe I'll leave that in for a second. There's a pumpkin there. Now, this image, you can make images like this for your category of what you are about. And imagine them looking like this. You could even take this image, put it in there, say, I would like to make something like this about this that I did, and put all the information you wrote about it or what you have come up with. And you could come up with something like this for your material. If that's not interesting, what's the meaning of interesting at this point? I'll zoom in on some parts here. Code duality processes. Dynamic processes. The foundation. Speculative grammar. Then inference, then rhetoric. So the amount of detail on this, there's no shortage. So I want to show how cool are the colors on this. This can be created. Now, let's go back to examples of things I have generated. Here's a fun one. But no, before we get to the fun one, this is a great example of what I can make from a previous talk. So I had Scott H. Young on the show. And I once interviewed him by text too, but he was on the show. We talked about ultra learning, and he's talked a lot about learning over the years. Let's pull this one up. This here is a summary or infographic of all the concepts from his book, Get Better at Anything, 12 Maxims for Mastery, that we talked about. Now, I wouldn't, if you told me to make this, it would take, I don't even know how long. So he gave a Tetris example in the episode. Pre-internet, post-internet. So pre-internet, it was limited. Post-internet, you observe, you learn from others, and learning can grow quickly. Creativity's foundation. You copy and observe things, remix and combine them, and then you have creative output, which is something I believe in. You have to mix things and then put them out creatively. They don't just come from scratch. That's not how that works. And approach and motivation, early success. So you have a little bit of early success. You build on that. You get failure, but you refine afterwards. But you need some early success to get motivation. Look at anything that worked out well when you try something new, because that will push you forward. I've done that many a time. It's fabulous. Build on success first. Habits versus projects. So habits, you're doing. Projects, you have a bigger picture thing you're working on. But the habits are kind of like an engine rolling in the background. And then the projects are things, okay, I'm going to do that thing. I'm going to do that thing. Project would be like a destination if you're in a car. And the habit would be the engine taking you there. You keep them going because that's like the car at idle, is you doing reading regularly or writing regularly or recording regularly, whatever it might be. These habits are very valuable. Without them, projects don't happen. They won't. They're too far away. But with them, projects are just around the corner, setting a goal. Let me zoom in here. So we've got overcoming obstacles and mental models. Fear and avoidance hinders learning. Repeated exposure, when you touch something a lot of times, I talked about that with Gary Vaynerchuk very briefly. Fear fades. Fear fades. It was in a quick interview I did with him once. Once you take part in a lot, you're part of the community, and fear goes away because you are in it. When you're in it, it's highly valuable. Imagination and mental models. Scott has talked a lot about mental models. Stimulate reality, reason and predict, and then you build a basis of intelligence. This right here, it's a wonderful representation of what Scott talked about during our whole discussion in one image. So can you do this for a variety of material? Yes, you could summarize or put it into a form that you see better. If you want to understand it or be able to look at it like, I did this thing. I wrote about this for 5 pages of writing. What does this look like in visual form? What does it look like in the form of arrows and squares and text related to each other? You can do that with this and see it differently very quickly. Let me close this one. All right. So that's another example. You can also have, I made a different infographic. Should I showcase this one? It's reasonable. See, here's a different, I'll share this one because it's the similar talk, but it's a different way to showcase it. So let's pull this one up. There it is. So this is the same talk, but in a different way of presenting it. You can see how it has some of the elements, but it looks different. So you could do that. This is like the whiteboard. It made a whiteboard of what Scott talked about. Very neat. Shows some of his important concepts from his 12 maxims, and it looks different. So anytime you see something on the internet, or what I just posted, or anywhere, you could take that, put that in image generation, describe, I want to make something for this that looks like this. Can you do that? And you could be right there. And then if you want to adjust something that comes to mind, you tell it, I'd like to adjust it like this. You can always throw in adjustments, and it makes a big difference. Now, before the quote ones that were square, I was making more brief postings. Here's an example of a brief one that it was just for one day post that was about what Kaylita Denton said on episode 456. You can learn cooperation. It doesn't have to be hardwired. It can spread through who you're connected with. So Kaylita was on the show, a wonderful guest, and we covered quite a bit. Here's an example of you can learn cooperation. You don't have to just be cooperative. It can develop over time as a skill or ability, and the people you're connected with can cause you to be more cooperative. How neat is that? I think it's very neat. And so this was in a vertical post, but if I wanted to with this one, I could ask image generation to turn this into a square post or whatever kind, and a lot of the difficult work would already be done. The main things, you have to put in what you have for the image and then go from there. But it's a wonderful resource and very valuable. You can change form based on what you are looking for. Now, the whiteboard concept, you could do it for partial items. This was from my episode with Mary Childs, and we talked about her book, The Bond King. Here is a description of some pieces from our talk, just some pieces described in a whiteboard form, like in front of a class, from our talk. So it took from our talk and created this. There's Bill Gross, which she talked about quite a bit. That's the Bond King. The evolution of the bond market, how it went from the old era to the new era. And it has the writing process. Stress testing words, creativity plus math, the truth. These were some very important concepts. Also, the individualism theory down there on the bottom right. These were 4 important concepts and descriptions that she talked about during our talk in visual form. So if someone wanted to see it or have a backdrop for the talk, we would have this. I may use backdrops for future talks with individuals because then that's another element added on that was not there previously. I think that's quite interesting. And anything you can try or do, only your creativity is the limit. Because as far as you can go, technology is matching up to that rapidly, and we are in a wonderful time of that. If you're one of the people who likes it. Some people are not using it much, and that's okay as well. Let's include an example here that I thought was cool. This will be this will be a last example. Do I include this one here? The audio landscape and the art of conversation. So there's that. But here's one. This was created by somebody on Twitter, and they did it of their career path. And you can see an example of, this is for Josh. He made something showcasing his career path as going through on an old train path long ago, like in olden times. And so it shows his education and early career at Google, and Google something, and then Google Labs, Gemini. So I guess he's part of a Gemini and AI studio. So how cool to represent your life in some sort of image. You could do this if you give enough details of I was doing this, then I did this, I did this, I did this, then I did this. You could have a golden image of your path. An image can say so much, and it illustrates it, so it can take you back a bit to all the things that you did. So that's an example of that one. On this one there, I wanted to bring up a few examples of what can be done in this realm creatively for yourself, for others. some of the technologies out there we're talking about. That's Nano Banana Pro. There's Google AI Studio, Notebook LM. ChatGPT has image generation. This was with Nano Banana, so I guess I'll stick to the theme of the current one. But they keep improving, so it's not so specifically about the one of today, even though that's what I'm talking about. But it's about the continuing resources that you are able to use moving forward. So give those a try, check them out, or if you just find them interesting, that's cool as well. Long live the books. So I hope you enjoyed that one. This has been episode number 458 of the Armin Show podcast. Onward we go. Enjoy. And we will see you on the next one. And we are out.